There was a time when the most powerful people in the world discovered a secret so profound, so counterintuitive, that most people spend their entire lives never understanding it. That secret was this: the man who constantly justifies himself is announcing his own weakness to the world, and the man who stays silent is telling the world that he simply does not need its approval. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, and today, in a world drowning in noise, in opinions, in endless explanations, this truth has never been more powerful. Today we are going to talk about a force that cannot be seen, cannot be heard, but can absolutely be felt. That force is silence. Think about this for a moment. When someone says something negative about you, what is your first instinct? You rise up. You start talking. You try to prove that you are right. You give argument after argument. You begin accounting for your entire life, your entire character, in front of someone who has perhaps already made up their mind about you. And when you do all of this, what actually happens? That person becomes even more confident that they have found something inside you, something that is disturbing you, something that is breaking you. Your justification becomes your loudest confession. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that a ruler's greatest mistake is to go around clarifying his decisions in front of people. When a king begins explaining his choices, he is essentially declaring, I need your approval. And the moment you need someone's approval, you are standing beneath them, not above them. Power lives where explanation is unnecessary. Power lives in the silence that follows a decision already made. Now let us go deeper. Why does a person justify themselves in the first place? When we do something and someone questions it, an invisible fear awakens inside us. The fear that this person might think we are wrong. The fear that we might fall in their eyes. The fear that they might become angry with us or walk away from us. This fear is actually the insecurity living inside us. The voice that says, my value depends on what others think of me. And when you are driven by this fear to explain yourself, you are handing that person the power to judge you. You are placing the verdict of your own life into someone else's hands. Machiavelli saw this as the mark of a weak man. But silence is different. Silence does not mean you have lost. Silence does not mean you have no answer. Silence means you are so rooted within yourself that you do not need anyone's certificate to move forward. Silence is a language that only those with the depth to understand it can truly read. When you stay quiet after an accusation, two things happen simultaneously. First, the other person becomes confused. They expected you to break, to beg, to explain. You did none of those things, and that silence inflicts more damage than any rebuttal ever could. Second, in the eyes of the world, a different image forms around you, an image that carries the weight of deep, unshakable confidence. Look at history. Look at the lives of those who changed the world. Abraham Lincoln was called weak, incompetent, and far worse. He was mocked by journalists, ridiculed by politicians, and dismissed by men who considered themselves far superior. Lincoln rarely responded. His work responded for him. Theodore Roosevelt carried a philosophy through his entire life. Do not descend to the level of your critics. Let your actions speak in a language your words never could. Warren Buffett has been called outdated, wrong, and irrelevant by analysts and so-called experts more times than anyone can count. Buffett never replied to their noise. His returns replied. Decade after decade, the scoreboard answered every critic who ever opened their mouth. This is not just the philosophy of the great and famous. This is about your life and mine. Think about your daily reality. Something gets triggered in a relationship. Your partner says something that cuts deep. Your boss questions your work. Your friends laugh at your choices. Your family disagrees with your decisions. And what do? You start talking. You start explaining. You exhaust yourself trying to convince people who perhaps were never going to be convinced in the first place. And in that exhausting process, you burn your energy, your time, your mental clarity, and your inner peace, all on a fire that was never yours to put out. Machiavelli's lesson runs deeper than most people realize. He believed that the man who bends himself to protect his reputation in front of others is the very man who destroys it. Real dignity exists when you are so aligned with yourself that nothing from the outside can shake what is inside. A tree that stands through a storm is not unaffected by the wind. It is simply rooted deep enough that the wind cannot own it. A person who does not crumble under criticism is not without feeling. They are simply strong enough inside that the criticism cannot define them. But here is something critically important to understand. Silence is not suppression. Silence is not swallowing everything and doing nothing. Machiavelli was a deeply practical man. He believed that when an answer is necessary, you must give it, but on your terms, at your timing, in your language. Not from a place of reaction, but from a place of intention. The difference between the two is enormous. When you react, the other person is in control of you. When you respond deliberately and selectively, you are in control of the conversation. That choice, the choice of when to speak, is itself an expression of power. Choosing silence is not the absence of a response. It is the most powerful response available. There is also a psychological dimension to justification that most people never examine. When we repeatedly explain ourselves, we are training our own minds to believe that we need permission. We are writing a message into our subconscious that says my choices must be validated from outside. And once this mental pattern is established, it becomes deeply dangerous. It means your self-worth becomes externally defined. You begin doing what others approve of rather than what you believe in. You start thinking in ways that others find acceptable rather than ways that are true. This is not freedom. This is a golden cage. It looks beautiful from outside and feels suffocating from within. Silence carries power that very few people ever learn to wield. When you say nothing after an accusation, something remarkable happens in the psychological space between you and the other person. They begin to fill the silence. They start talking. They start explaining themselves. They become defensive. You did nothing. You simply remained still, and the power shifted entirely. The person seeking a response is always desperate. The person who has an answer and does not feel compelled to give it, that person is dominant. This is not manipulation. This is the natural law of energy and attention. Machiavelli also wrote about what he called virtue. Not virtue in the conventional moral sense, but an inner force, an inner character, an inner strength that allows a person to maintain their dignity regardless of circumstances. A person with virtue does not shrink under pressure. They do not fear criticism. They do not chase approval. This virtue is what makes silence possible. If there is fear inside, staying quiet is nearly impossible. Every silence will feel like a defeat. But if there is genuine strength inside, silence becomes natural. It becomes the most honest expression of who you are. Here is another trap that justification sets for you, one that almost nobody talks about. When you repeatedly explain yourself to someone, you are also signaling something subtle but powerful. You are saying, I have extra time, I have surplus energy. I am willing to spend both of them here, on this, on you. And in that signal lies a quiet surrender of status. The person with a great vision, with meaningful work, with significant responsibilities, that person does not have the bandwidth to respond to every opinion formed about them. When you stay silent and return to your work, you are showing the world where your focus lives. And one day, that focus becomes your answer, written not in words, but in results that speak for themselves across time. Think about the world we live in today. Every person has a platform. Every opinion gets a post. Every reaction gets a reply. The noise is everywhere and it is constant. In this ocean of noise, the person who understands strategic silence stands apart in a way that words simply cannot manufacture. Their words carry more weight when they do speak. Their presence feels more significant. Their image holds a gravity that constant talkers never achieve. Justification is an addiction. Once you become enslaved to it, you spend your entire life trying to satisfy people who were never going to be satisfied. And one day when you turn around and look back, you realize that you did everything except the one thing you were actually here to do, because your energy went where it should never have gone. Marcus Aurelius, writing centuries before Machiavelli, in his private journals that became the Meditations, said something that echoes this truth from a different angle. He wrote that you should never let your inner peace become a slave to the opinions of others. Your thoughts, your decisions, the responsibility of your life, all of it belongs to you. When you hand people the power to define you, you surrender the freedom that is yours by nature. Silence is the refusal of that surrender. Silence is saying, you may not understand me, and that is fine. You may judge me, and that is also fine. I will remain exactly who I am. Now here is the most important thing. To truly live this principle, you must do one piece of inner work first. You must be honest with yourself, because silence is only powerful when it comes from genuine confidence. If deep down you know that the accusation is true, and you are quiet only because you cannot face it, that is not silence. That is avoidance. That is cowardice wearing the mask of composure. Machiavelli understood this distinction with absolute clarity. There is weak silence and there is strong silence. Weak silence comes from fear. Strong silence comes from knowing exactly who you are. So before anything else, be honest with yourself. Know your strengths. Know your values. Know the reasons behind your decisions, not to present them to anyone, but because you owe that clarity to yourself. When that foundation is solid, silence will not be something you force. It will be something you naturally embody. To bring everything together, we live in an age where silence has been mistaken for weakness, where explaining yourself has been mistaken for strength, and where the need for approval has been disguised as connection. Machiavelli saw through all of it centuries ago. The ruler who explains every decision loses authority. The person who justifies every choice loses dignity. The man or woman who stays rooted in their own truth, who lets their work do the speaking, who does not flinch when the world forms its opinions, that is the person who carries real power. Not loud power, not aggressive power, but the quiet, deep, unmovable power that the world has always respected even when it did not fully understand it. Protect your silence. It is not emptiness. It is not passivity. It is the fullest expression of who you are. The next time someone questions your decisions, the next time an accusation lands at your door, the next time the world asks you to explain yourself on its terms, take a long breath. Feel yourself from the inside and stay quiet. Return to your work. Live your vision. Walk your path. Because in the end, what remains is never what you said. What remains is what you built, what you became, and the silence that protected you long enough to become it. Silence is not empty. Silence is full of everything that matters. And that was Machiavelli's greatest lesson.